Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Cutler here on the Let's Talk to Cutler broadcast, the Let's Talk to Cutler platform. And we've been talking and having some great conversations about how to handle life at its most intense moments. We're really talking about how do we get through life? How do we handle those moments when we are overwhelmed? And we have been basing our conversations on this book right here. When I'm overwhelmed, how to handle life at its most intense moments. That's my sixth book. It's over on Amazon.com. Run on over there and get it so that you can join the conversation, or at least so the conversation can become a little more meaningful. Because at the end of each chapter, there are some moments of reflection, that sort of thing. So, do you really need it to join the conversation? No, not at all. Don't let that stop you from joining this conversation that we have on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But if you want to get more out of it, then I just encourage you to just run on and get the book so that you can have that space when you can do your personal reflections. Listen, this channel is about inspiration, it's about motivation, it is about challenging and empowering us so that we can show up a little bit better tomorrow than we did today. It means that as we are going through life, when we get to the end of the day, we stop and go, is there anything that I could have done differently today? Is there something that I can do a little bit better tomorrow? Do I have an opportunity to show up? All right. So we're definitely going to talk about that. And I want to talk this evening specifically about, as we are encouraging, as we are dealing with these overwhelming moments, I specifically want to talk about how do we handle these moments when we are either alone or lonely, because there really is a difference. You all can just start chit-chatting about that. Good evening, Gwendolyn. Good evening, Mary Grace. Listen, we're going to talk about, again, how do we handle those overwhelming moments when we are alone versus when we are lonely. We're going to talk about the difference and talk about the ramifications of it. But of course, you all know me. It is my goal. It is my hope. It is my desire to pull out a few nuggets so that we can be empowered to show up a little bit better tomorrow than we did today. So if you're just riding by my channel for the first time, hit those brakes, stop, just give me 1,800 seconds, because that's all I need to encourage us, to get us on the path of better, to get us on the path of handling those overwhelming moments. Meanwhile, you all do me a favor. Go and tell somebody, come on, let's talk to Cutler. We're going to talk about how to handle life at its most intense moments. Hang on, I promise you, I will be right back.
Let's talk to Cutler. One more thing, like, subscribe, and share. Come on, let's talk to Cutler.
You all, you know what I was thinking? I was thinking when I was growing up and we used to hear about folk who talk to themselves. We had our own ideas about what it meant, what kind of people talk to themselves. So just out of the gate, I want to know this. When you hear about people talking to themselves, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind when you hear this notion, this fact that people talk to themselves? Because again, we're going to talk about when I'm overwhelmed, how to handle life at its most intense moments. And more specifically, this evening, we're going to talk about one of the lessons that I put in the book is in chapter 2 is talk to yourself. You want to make it through some challenging moments, through some intense moments, talk to yourself. And I will tell you why. But let me just shout out and say hi to our LTTC VIPs. Those are the people who usually jump into the chat first. And they are, I'm going to just post them out there. They are Gwendolyn Beatty, who says, hello, are you all having a busy week? You all talk to each other during this conversation, all right? And then Mary Grace, who so affectionately refers to me as Bishop, and she says, good evening, Bishop. Mary Grace, my friend, it's always good to see you. And then our third LTTC VIP is Linda Martin, who says, good evening, happy 95th birthday, Cousin Eunice. Oh, yes, so today happens to be my grandmother's 95th birthday. What a blessing. What a blessing to still have my... to have my grandmother with me, who's still beautiful at 95 years old. So Linda, thank you so much for offering birthday greetings to my grandmother. Hey, it's good to see all of you. But again, so talk to me as we try to grow this community. of winners. We are winning. We're on our way to becoming better every day. Every day, the opportunity, the universe allows us a unique space that we did not necessarily see the day before. Every day, let me say that again. Every day, the universe offers us this unique space that we did not necessarily have the day before, and that space is called better. Every day in your life expands because there's a new opportunity for better. All right, hang on to that. But you all talk to me about these overwhelming moments when you feel alone or lonely. Because as chapter 2 points out, life is not like a car, life is not like a house, life is not like an appliance. Life does not come with a prescribed set of warranties that guards us against the bumps and the bruises and the hard knocks, because we are going to encounter those, and there are no guarantees. There are no warranties about how to handle all that. There's no policy to ensure that we are going to be repaired or restored when we are broken and bruised and cracked and tarnished and damaged. There are no guarantees that come along with our birth. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. There's no guarantee that we're going to have somebody who's going to bandage us, who's going to bandage our wounds, who's going to help our scrapes and our scratches and all of that. There's nobody who's going to help repair our bruised ego. There's nobody who's going to repair our broken hearts. No guarantees for any of that stuff. Sometimes life, as I said in the book, life is going to thrust us into situations when we are alone. When we are alone, life will thrust us into those situations. Look at what's going on now, of all things, with another wave of this pandemic. We are thrust into those moments when we are alone. And quite honestly, there are moments when we feel lonely. Let me pause and just talk about, I'm looking at what you all have put in the chat. Yeah, when we used to hear people say, talking to themselves, what comes to mind? We say it's okay to talk to yourselves as long as you don't answer. And then there are people we used to say, oh, if you talk to yourself, you were crazy. I'll talk about that. I'll give you all my impression, but I'll tell you just right out the gate, I've learned to talk to myself, question myself, and then answer myself. I've learned to do all of that. Because one of the things that we have to deal with, especially during this time where we're still feeling, here again, isolated, we have to deal with feeling lonely and being alone. May I talk about the difference between the two, just so that we're clear about it, you all? Being alone is just physical, not just, because I don't want to minimize or diminish its impact. So when we are alone, that's physical isolation. That is physical solitude. That's what it means to be alone. Being alone is a physical state. It is a physical presence or lack thereof. I'm isolated. I'm in solitude. That means I am alone. The difference between alone and lonely is that lonely is a mental or emotional state. It means that I'm emotionally or mentally disconnected. I'm emotionally or mentally abandoned. And that's what makes people sad. Do you not know, as I pointed out in the book, you can be among a crowd of people and still be lonely. It doesn't matter whether there are 10 people who live in your house or 20, you can still be lonely. People, it happens all the time. People feel emotionally disconnected. They feel mentally abandoned. And while we sometimes look at the harshness of that, sometimes we forget the harshness of being alone. Because we say, okay, as long as I'm not lonely, as long as I don't feel emotionally disconnected or physically or mentally connected, I want you all to know this. So it is one thing to be lonely, emotionally and mentally disconnected. But if the truth be told, even psychologists and psychiatrists are saying that there's something detrimental with being alone, which is the physical isolation. Because when you are physically isolated, that can be detrimental, because what happens is not only does it affect you mentally and emotionally, really, which is loneliness, but you all look at what happens when we sometimes feel physically isolated for so long. Look at what happened to a lot of people in the midst of this pandemic. If the truth be told, how many of us are or have become or know people who seem to have some degree of PTSD? I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to diminish. I'm not trying to minimize anybody's experiences. I'm trying to rather offer a platform where we can be honest, you all, and be transparent. These past 2 years have produced in a lot of people some kind of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Let's be honest. Let's tell the truth. Pandemic was stressful. It was traumatic. And for many people who had to physically isolate themselves, especially for long term, then they have to deal with somewhat like PTSD. Physical isolation led to that. Physical isolation also led to some people dealing with a whole lot of anxiety, because the state of thinking, oh my God, I am alone. Physical isolation led some people to some kind of sometimes addictive behavior. And I'm not necessarily talking about what kind of behavior, but physical isolation does that. Why? Because people have developed coping mechanisms. There's some people who develop eating disorders in the midst of being isolated physically for so long. There are some people who may have developed habits for smoking, and because they've been here for so long. People have developed coping mechanisms. Some people have decided, honestly, y'all, you may have not heard about this, but there's some people who just decided they wanted to try to sleep this away. So they get up, they eat, and some folk don't even hop in the shower or bathe themselves on a regular basis, but they get up to the extent that they can. They eat, they may watch TV, and they go right back to bed. This isolation, be it mental, emotional, or physical, is no joke. Mary Grace, you're right. This pandemic has caused an epidemic for mental health. It really has. And so one of the things I want to offer us tonight is a platform to talk about that, and a platform to scream for help. If we're not screaming for help for ourselves, at least for other people. People have developed chronic fear from being in the homes by themselves. This thing is no joke. So when we talk about when I am overwhelmed, how to handle life at its most intense moments, this pandemic is an intense moment. This next wave of having to be physically isolated is an intense moment. And we would not have seen this coming if you would have given us a crystal ball. So much addictive behavior has increased. Yes, alcohol use for some has increased. Illicit drug use has increased. People are trying to cope however they can. I'm not excusing any of it. I'm speaking to the reality of what's going on. People feeling alone, or not just feeling, but being alone, and then feeling lonely. And so that is why I put chapter 2 in this book. How do we handle life at its most intense moments? What is one of the lessons that we learn? To learn to talk to yourself. Learn how to talk to yourself. Hello, my friend Auntie, good to see you. I'm talking about how to deal with those moments when we are alone and when we feel lonely. Talk to yourself. Can I give you all an example? You all know I pull a whole lot of my examples just out of scripture. So even when I think about one of the biblical characters, David. When I think about David's lifetime, I'm thinking about many of us have been there. You know, it sounds nice when David wrote about how he encouraged himself. That sounds wonderful. But guess really what David was doing? That was all about self-preservation. So if I may take a lesson from a biblical character and give it a degree of just make it pragmatic and practical, the lesson was all about self-preservation. Let's talk about learning what self-preservation is all about, if it means nothing else than learning how to talk to yourself. Scripture says he encouraged himself, but what does that mean? Learn how to talk to yourself. So what if they think I'm crazy? Who cares? Self-preservation has to be important, because if I am alone and no one else is around, I've got to learn how to talk to myself and talk myself out of some situations, talk myself out of some circumstances, talk myself out of some predicaments that would otherwise lead me down the wrong path. So I know, as we're dealing with this quarantine, as we're dealing with being isolated again, it's okay. Learn how to talk to yourself. You know, there's one Reformation that uses the language, encourage yourself. And I believe that. I absolutely believe in that. But I'm not necessarily using that language for everybody, because sometimes I will admit that it sounds easier. It is easier said than done. Oh, just encourage yourself. Well, tell me how. Don't just tell me to encourage myself and that's leave me alone to encourage myself. Tell me how. So that is the conversation that I want us to have tonight. Because guess what, you all? If we are not living in a state of encouragement, and this comes directly from the book, if we are not living in a state of encouragement, then we are living in discouragement, and we were never intended or created or designed to live in a state of discouragement. I'm here tonight to offer us the power to encourage ourselves. That's my offering tonight. The power to talk to yourself and to encourage yourself. Got to do that. Because guess what? If I don't encourage myself, that means I'm living in discouragement. And so if I do nothing, if I don't encourage myself, that means I have accepted discouragement. Many times we end up waiting, and I wrote it something, and I'm just trying to pull these words off the pages of this book. Many times our waiting in the pool of discouragement comes about because why? We attempted to be self-sufficient. I told us in our last conversation, learn to give your emotions a voice. When you're feeling lonely, scream to the top of your voice, somebody help me. That's one of the things. When you're feeling overwhelmed, just yell, scream, do something, give your emotions a voice. And right next to giving your emotions a voice, learn how to talk to yourself. Self, you can be better. Self, you can get out of this. Self, you need somebody to help you other than you. Don't be completely self-sufficient. Don't be completely self-trusting. Because with all of our intellect, with all of our talents, with all of our abilities, we need somebody else to help us traverse the corridors of life, to navigate the channels of life. We need somebody else to help us. Stop walking. May I ask you, may I offer you this? Stop walking in fear. Stop walking in doubt. Stop walking in anxiety. Stop focusing only on your feelings and your emotions. Stop speaking negatively about your life. Stop thinking somebody is out to get you. Stop thinking the creator of the world is out to get you. Certainly he's not out to get us, because if he were out to get us, he would have never created us in the first place. It is okay. Thank you, Mary Grace. Normalize reaching out. It is okay to reach out for help. Make it a part of your practice to say, I'm not going to be in this thing by myself. I'm not doing this alone. Make it a part to know your circle. I did a segment a couple of years ago about check your circles. Know the people who are in your circle so that you know it's okay to reach out and call them. Because guess what? If it is not okay to reach out and call the people in your circle, may I suggest to you, change your circle. That was not even on my radar to talk about this evening. But if you don't have people that you can reach out to and just say, I'm not doing okay, I need a little help, I need a shoulder to lean on, an ear to listen, a voice of reason, a voice of wisdom. If you don't have anybody in your circle like that, you all change your circle. Do a circle assessment. Do a circle assessment. Check your circle and then change your circle. We have to be intentional about our self-preservation. Be intentional about encouraging ourselves. Be intentional about saying, I'm going to make it. Be intentional about saying it's going to be all right. Be intentional about saying it doesn't look real good right now, but I know I'll be okay. And I know I'll come through this. And again, I'm thankful for those of you who in the comments and you're chit-chatting about making sure that you understand it's okay to reach out to people, because one of the things that life has taught me is that sometimes you got to reach beyond yourself. You've got to reach out to people. You can't be the only answer to all of your problems. You can't be the only solution to all of your challenges. You cannot, because if I am the only source of my deliverance, I can never rise above myself. What does that mean, Cutler? It means I can go no higher than my greatest ability. But just perhaps there's somebody in my circle a little stronger than I am at the moment. There's somebody in my circle who knows a little more than I do at the moment. Don't always strive to be the strongest person in your circle, for God's sake. I take comfort in the fact that I got smarter people in my circle. I got stronger people in my circle. I got richer people in my circle than me. Don't always strive to be the top in your circle. Because if you are your only source of deliverance and help, then you can never rise any further than you can lift your arms or push yourself up. Things are going to work out. Yes, they are. But some people go through hell and high water on their way to things working out. And one of the things that I'm trying to offer us tonight, I'm trying to offer us a journey through anywhere but hell and high water. Right? So what are we going to do? I'm going to talk to myself. I'm going to be all right, because one of the things, if you get to the end of chapter 2, it says there's some thoughts to remember. Y'all know I got to make this. I got to make this make sense, because I only got 1,800 seconds with you. But when you get to the end of chapter 2 poses some thoughts for us to remember. One is, if we are not living in a state of encouragement, then we are living in discouragement. For those moments when people say, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything. I don't even know how to talk myself out of this. What you just talked yourself into was discouragement. What you just talked yourself into then was a state of discouragement. And you don't want to do that. Talk yourself right out of discouragement. Talk yourself into encouragement. And understand, ain't nobody, y'all know I'm from the country, so I have to pull out those double negative colloquialisms from time to time. Ain't nobody out to get you. And understand this, we need other people in our lives to help us. Why? To help us when those moments when we are alone. Because here we go again in isolation. So what are we doing? We're learning to reach out through social media. We're learning to reach out through the internet. Pick up the phone, for God's sake. So learn to reach out. We talked some time ago, let's not suffer in silence. So when we are alone, we break down the barriers. We create avenues and venues and corridors to get us to other people. Don't suffer in silence. I know we are isolated, but one of the things that we can do with isolation, which is physical isolation, is one of the things that we can do, we can transcend the physical isolation and create ways to connect to people. That's why at the end of every broadcast, I thank you all, and I mean it from my whole heart. When I say let's keep building community and let's maintain connectivity, I mean it from the bottom of my heart, because when we came into this pandemic at the beginning of 2020, one of the ways that we start maintaining connectivity to making sure that we were not alone We reached out through text and email and social media and these kinds of platforms. And I encouraged and admonished us, listen, don't forget the young, don't forget the senior citizens, don't forget the elderly. And I told people a couple of years ago, listen, if you live near my mother, pick up the phone and call her. If you live near my aunts and uncles, pick up the phone and call them, because I knew at that time they were not necessarily going to run and flock to social media. They just were not. Not 70, 80, and 90 years old. They were not all of them were going to do that. And so we have learned to break down the walls of physical isolation to the extent that we can. Don't you all know that you all do this for me every Tuesday and Thursday when we show up on this platform and I see you all chatting in the comments that you all are breaking the bounds of physical isolation for me. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. When I go to read my emails and you all reach out and communicate, thank you for that. So I try to reciprocate. I try to help break down these barriers that feel like physical isolation. And then we try to do it with each other when it comes to loneliness, not just alone, but loneliness. Check on somebody so that they don't emotionally feel disconnected, so that they don't mentally feel abandoned. That's a horrible space. And to the extent that we can, let's not let that happen. That is why I say let's maintain connectivity. That's why. It's twofold. It's twofold. It's to combat the physical isolation, and it is to combat the emotional and mental abandonment. To the extent that we can, let's try to prevent that. Let's try to prevent that. I want to ask you all this. There are some personal, you got to get this book, because at the end of this chapter, there are also some moments of personal reflections. So I want to ask you this. I want to ask you all this. What kind of support and advice would you like for someone to give you? Think about it. What kind of support and advice would you like for someone to give you? Cutler, why would you ask that? I ask that because sometimes those of us who are on the giving end and trying to reach out to people and make sure that they're okay, we consider ourselves the strong, the community of winners, the community of strong people. But there are times when we need encouragement ourselves. What kind of support and advice would you like for someone to give you? You got to know that. When you're giving and giving and giving, know what you need to get. That's for those of you who are always on the giving end. Know what you need to get. And don't be afraid to ask for it. I'm going through. I need an ear. I don't need you to say anything. I just need an ear right now. Or I'm standing on the crossroads and I'm not sure what I should do. I need your voice of wisdom. Know the kind of support. No, you all, this is when drive-bys became very important. I know we're in isolation. I know we're quarantined, but maybe the least thing you can do is just drive by my house, get outside of your car, stand on the sidewalk. I stand on my porch, and at least we can have a conversation face to face. Know what you need. Know the kind, you have to know the support and advice that you would like. It might be, I just need to see another human face. Let's think about these things. We say to the elderly, listen, all right, open your door. I'm just going to drive by, step by, and just wait. I just need to see your face. I did it for some of the elderly people who live near me, who were in their 80s and 90s. I said, I don't need to hug your neck. As a matter of fact, I don't want to hug your neck, because if I do it, then you may think it's okay for everybody else to do it. And I want you to be safe and I want you to be careful. So what did I do? I did this for some of the seniors in my community who are in their 80s and 90s. I said to them, I'm going to drive by, just come to your door. I just need to see your face and know that you're okay. And from time to time, I would just have some goodies that I would just drop, that I would leave on the porch, and I would go step back maybe about 50 feet. And I said, listen, I'm going to come by. I'm going to drop this off. You can leave it there. You can spray it with Lysol. You can do whatever you need to do. But you all understand what I'm saying. As you're giving and giving, know what you need to get. And I want to go back to this whole piece, the premise of this chapter about encouraging yourself, talking to yourself so that you understand and know that you understand the principles and the practicality of encouraging yourself. Here is what I want you to do. I want you to stand in front of a mirror and tell the person that you see in that mirror that with all of your flaws and your failures and your mistakes, the creator of the universe loves you. God loves you. And as you're standing there and you're validating the person that you see in the mirror, and you're talking to yourself and you're telling the person in the mirror, listen, you're strong enough to make it. You got a community that believes in you. You have a circle that supports you. There's some steadfastness within you. There's some perseverance within you. There's some stick-to-itness within you. Stand in front. And you all, I'm telling you, that this is just not a frivolous exercise, but I believe this with my whole heart. Stand in front of the mirror, talk to the person that you see in the mirror, and then describe the response that you get from that person. Listen, you all. I told y'all that I was driving around to the people who were 80 and 90 years old. Let me tell you, look, let me just put this in the chat for a moment. Look at this, you all. So my good friend Auntie says, somebody must have moved the goodies that you left at my door. Auntie ain't nowhere near 70, 80, and 90 years old. But I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do. Absolutely, Angie. Yes, this is what I call, I love your terminology. This is the accountability mirror. You all look in that mirror and say, you know what, you're going to make it. You're going to be all right. You got something within you that pushes you. You got something within you that compels you. You have something within you that gives you the inertia to catapult you into a space that's called better. And then when you talk to yourself, don't leave. Don't be rude. Stay there. And describe the response from the person that's in the mirror. Sometimes we have complexes about coming face to face with our own strength. Sometimes we have complexes about coming face to face with our own strength. But I challenge you all this evening, stand in front of the mirror, compliment yourself, encourage yourself, tell yourself you're going to make it, and don't leave. Stand there and see what your reflection has to say back to you. Don't cower from the strength that you acknowledge. Can I tell you all? I'm going to have to go back and replay this for me. Do not cower from the internal strength that you acknowledge. I got to get out of here, you all, but step in front of the mirror, say everything positive and powerful and impactful to and about yourself that you know is true, and stand there and live in the moment. I offer you all the power to stand in the moment of recognizing your own power. Don't stop believing in yourself. But so when you hear this thing again about encourage yourself, that's how you do it. Stand in front of the mirror, tell yourself you can make it. You got everything within you to make it. You got a circle that supports you. And guess what? If you don't believe that your circle supports you, start cutting your circle off, reevaluate, and bring in new people, new recruits for your circle. Y'all, I gotta go. I gotta go. And that's country. I gotta go. I'm not saying I've got to go. I gotta go. I've been here with y'all for 1,800 seconds, but I'm telling you all, don't be afraid to stand in the truth of your own strength. Encourage yourself. Let's defeat alone and loneliness. And let's do it strategically and intentionally. Because guess what? You can't help anybody else until you learn how to help yourself first. And the next time we chat, we're going to talk about how do we encourage somebody else. We'll talk about that. But I first had to get us to a space and a place where we learn how to help ourselves. So that is why we give our emotions a voice. And then we learn to talk to ourselves. And the next time we chat, we'll talk about being able to encourage somebody else. All right? This is the book that we're basing our conversation on. When I'm overwhelmed, how to handle life at its most intense moments. I think I shared with you, this is my 6th book. Run on over to Amazon.com and get it if you haven't. You all send me emails. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how you're doing. I want to hear from you. I want to know how you all are doing. You know, my email is talk2cutler@gmail.com. Talk2cutler@gmail.com. Listen, it's been a great evening of conversation from me to you and from you to me. I want to thank you all for that. And I encourage us, let's keep building community. Let's keep maintaining connectivity. Keep your heads up. Keep your hopes up. Stay safe, stay sane. Know from my heart to yours, there is and always will be much love. I will see you all Thursday when we talk about encouraging somebody else. Good night, everybody.